All right, let's get into it. Today, we're talking about something that affects every single one of us: data, privacy, and the rules the EU has put in place to protect you. It can feel, well, complex, but it's so important. We're going to break down the regulations, the real-world headaches, and what it all actually means for your personal info. So let's jump right in. You've probably heard this phrase before, right? Personal data is the new oil. And it's so true. Just think about it. Back in the day, oil fueled the Industrial Revolution. Today, our data, it fuels pretty much everything in the digital world. The apps we use, the ads we see, all of it. But when you've got something that valuable, you've also got a whole lot of risk.
And it's not just a theoretical risk. People are genuinely worried. Just look at these numbers from a 2021 survey. Over half of EU citizens are concerned about things like their data being stolen or their identity being used for fraud. And that makes perfect sense, right? When this new oil is being pumped all over the world, you got to have some serious rules to protect the pipeline.
Which brings us to the EU's big answer to this whole data dilemma. They've built a massive rulebook specifically for our digital age. And that rulebook is called the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation. Now, if you strip away all the legal jargon, it's really about one simple, powerful idea: giving you, the individual, control over your own information. It's meant to create one single set of rules that everybody has to play by, from the biggest tech giants right down to your local government.
And let me tell you, this is not just some friendly suggestion. The GDPR has serious teeth. We're not talking about a little slap on the wrist here. If a company messes up, the fine can be up to 4% of their total worldwide annual turnover. Now that is a number that gets everyone's attention. You can be sure of that.
Okay, so that's the theory. That's the rulebook. But what does it look like in the real world? How does all this play out when you're actually using daily services? Let's look at a couple of cases where these rules get put to the ultimate test.
Let's start with your health data. Okay, picture this. You're on holiday in another EU country, and you have an accident. How amazing and potentially life-saving would it be if the doctors there could immediately see your medical history? That's the goal. But trying to make that happen, well, it opens up a massive data protection challenge.
And here's where you see the fundamental problem. Different countries just have totally different philosophies on this. Some use an opt-in model, meaning they need your active, explicit yes before they share anything. But others use an opt-out model, where they just assume it's okay to share unless you specifically tell them no. This kind of legal patchwork makes creating a smooth, EU-wide health system, well, it's incredibly tough.
And it gets even weirder and more technical. So what happens if your data is locked away in a totally encrypted black box? The platform that's sending it literally can't see what's inside. But here's the legal twist. Just the act of transmitting that box is still considered processing personal data. It's this crazy situation where the very tech designed to maximize your privacy bumps right up against the letter of the law.
Okay, let's switch gears to a case where data sharing wasn't just a nice idea, it was an absolute necessity, and it had to happen fast. I'm talking about the EU Digital COVID Certificate. This thing was basically a gigantic, real-time experiment in getting data to move across borders, all because of a global crisis. And the way it worked was actually pretty slick and simple. First, your own country would issue you a secure certificate with a QR code. Then, someone like an airline or a border guard would scan that code, and boom, based on that verified info, vaccination, test, or recovery, you were good to go. It really showed what's possible when everyone is pulling in the same direction.
But it definitely wasn't perfect, and it had its critics. Some legal experts looked at it and said, hang on, isn't this regulation just repeating a bunch of privacy rules we already have in the GDPR? And on a more practical level, one of its rules, that no data could be kept during the verification scan, was seen as basically impossible. I mean, any digital check is going to leave some kind of temporary trace, right?
Now, this data protection revolution isn't just happening in healthcare. It's totally shaking up the world of finance, too. This is where something called PSD2 comes in. It's a directive that's all about making your payments safer online, but it also kicks the door open for new financial tech through what's called open banking.
And here's a pretty cool little fact for you. The whole concept of data protection by design, the idea that you should build privacy and security into a system from the very beginning, not just bolt it on at the end, that was actually mentioned in PSD2 before it became a huge legally required part of GDPR. So you can see how this way of thinking was already starting to spread.
So we've talked to health, we've talked finance, but what about the next big wave of technology? The next frontier for data protection? Yeah, you guessed it.
It's artificial intelligence.
Now, the GDPR already gives you some really powerful tools to deal with AI. For example, you have the right to not be subject to a decision that was made only by an algorithm, especially if it seriously affects you, like getting turned down for a loan. You can actually demand that a human being review the decision. Now, the EU wants to go even further with its proposed AI Act, but this brings up a huge new debate. If an AI makes a mistake or gets hacked, who's on the hook? Is it the company that's using the AI, or should the original developers who built the thing share some of that responsibility? That is a massive question regulators are trying to figure out right now.
So, as you can probably tell, this story is far from over. This isn't a rule book that was written in stone and then left alone. Data protection in the EU is this living, breathing thing that's constantly evolving to keep up.
And this timeline really shows you that evolution in action. You have GDPR landing in 2018 and setting a new global standard. Then PSD2's rules kick in. Then come the big proposals for an AI Act and a Data Act to figure out who gets to create value from data. It's just one piece of legislation building on the next, trying to stay ahead of the curve.
But through all these different laws, all these proposals, the fundamental goal really stays the same. It's all about finding that really delicate balance. How do we get all the amazing benefits of new technology and data-driven innovation without sacrificing our high standards for privacy, for security, and for our basic human rights?
And that really leaves us with one big question to think about. As technology like AI gets smarter, more powerful, and more independent, who is ultimately responsible for protecting your data? Is it the companies, the developers, the government? Or do we all have a part to play in this new data-driven world? Something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.